AITA for exposing my wife after she secretly edited recordings to frame me? My name is Jonah. I'm 30, and until 6 months ago, I thought the most stressful part of my life was trying to keep a small home repair business alive while paying a mortgage that seemed to get bigger every time I opened the banking app. I live in a quiet subdivision outside Portland, Oregon, the kind of place where the lawns are too neat, the HOA emails sound like legal threats, and everyone pretends not to notice when your trash can stay at the curb too long. My wife, Meredith, and I had been married for 4 years, together for almost 7. People called us solid because they only saw us at barbecues, birthday dinners, and Christmas card photos. They didn't see the small, soft places where things had started to rot. Most mornings, I left the house smelling like sawdust, drywall dust, and gas station coffee. I owned a small home repair business, which meant my phone never stopped buzzing with people asking if a loose cabinet door counted as an emergency or if I could just swing by to look at a faucet that had been leaking since July. Meredith worked from home most days as a communication strategist for a wellness media company. When I walked out with my muddy boots in one hand so I wouldn't track dirt across the entryway, she'd usually be sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop open, AirPods in, and a half-finished smoothie turning warm beside her. For most of our marriage, our problems were ordinary problems. Money, work, chores, my forgetting to schedule the dentist, her saying that I shut down whenever she tried to talk. I did shut down sometimes. I can admit that. I grew up in a house where nobody said, "I feel hurt." They said, "It's fine," then slammed cabinets until somebody got the message. Meredith grew up the opposite way. Her family could turn a disagreement about Thanksgiving sides into a 45-minute emotional debrief. At first, I admired that about her. She had words for everything. If I said I was tired, she asked what kind of tired. Physical? Emotional? Relational? Existential? I used to joke that being married to her was like living with a podcast host who also knew where the good towels were. Then she started actually working for a company that made podcasts. Her company produced shows about burnout, attachment styles, mindful parenting, workplace boundaries, and the kind of topics that made people say, "Wow, I feel seen," in Instagram comments. Meredith was good at it. Too good sometimes. She could make any situation sound like a teachable moment, including arguments where she was clearly wrong. Around the beginning of spring, she started talking about a new internal project. At first, she called it intimacy research. A week later, it was a marriage therapy concept. Then it became a narrative pitch about communication breakdown. The name kept changing, which should have bothered me more than it did. She said the project might help her get promoted. I wanted that for her. I really did. Meredith had been passed over once already, and it had wrecked her confidence. For 3 weeks after it happened, she spoke about her manager Tara as if Tara had personally deleted her future. So when Meredith asked if I would be more open about our marriage struggles because it helped her think through the audience, I tried. I answered questions that made me uncomfortable. I had conversations after 12-hour workdays when all I wanted was a shower and 10 minutes of silence. I even agreed to try one of those couples communication exercises where you repeat what the other person said before responding. So what I'm hearing is, I'd say, already feeling stupid. Meredith would nod, patient but watchful. Don't perform it, Jonah. Let it land. I didn't know what that meant half the time, but I tried because I thought we were trying to fix us. The first weird thing happened on a Thursday. I came home early because a client canceled after realizing a small leak was actually a roof issue, not a plumbing issue. I pulled into our driveway around 4:20 in the afternoon, which almost never happened. The neighborhood was quiet except for a lawn crew 2 streets over and Nora from next door dragging her empty trash bins up the driveway in slippers. Meredith's car was gone. That wasn't suspicious by itself. She could have gone to Target, Pilates, or one of those coffee shops where the chairs are uncomfortable on purpose. But when I walked inside, her laptop was open on the kitchen island. Her work calendar was still on the screen. I wasn't snooping. Not at first. I walked past it to grab a sparkling water from the fridge, and the screen caught my eye because there was a calendar block from 3:30 to 5:30 labeled Field Recording M/J Dynamic. M/J. Meredith and Jonah. My stomach did that slow drop where your body understands something before your brain gives it permission. I stood there with the fridge door open, cold air hitting my shins, staring at those words. Field recording. Not therapy session. Not research notes. Not interview prep. Field recording. Then her laptop pinged. A message preview slid across the corner of the screen from someone named Derek. Make sure you get the version where he goes quiet. That silence says everything. I closed the fridge without taking the water. I had heard Derek's name before. He worked with Meredith. Creative development, I think. She had described him as brilliant but chaotic, which in her world usually meant a man who missed deadlines but got praised for saying obvious things in a confident voice. I had never met him, but I already didn't like how familiar his message sounded. When Meredith got home 25 minutes later, she was carrying a tote bag from a bookstore and acting normal in that too normal way people do when they had rehearsed it in the car. Hey, she said, kicking off her sneakers. You're home early. Client canceled. Oh, nice. She kissed my cheek, but her eyes went straight to the kitchen island. I watched her notice the laptop was still open. One tiny pause. Half a second. Then she shut it casually, as if she were closing a cookbook. I leaned against the counter. Where were you? Coffee with Tara, she said. Tara was her manager. I had met her once at a company holiday party in a hotel ballroom, where everyone wore expensive casual clothes and talked about content ecosystems. What coffee shop? I asked. Meredith blinked. Why? Just asking. Pearl District. That's a lot of driving for a coffee. It was work. She walked past me and started unloading the dishwasher even though the dishes were dirty. That was when I knew she was lying. Meredith could lie with her face, but not with chores. When she was nervous, she cleaned things that did not need cleaning or cleaned them wrong. I almost confronted her right there. I almost said, what's M/J dynamic? I almost said, why is Derek telling you to record my silence? But I didn't. Instead, I asked, what do you want for dinner? She said she wasn't hungry. For the next 2 weeks, I paid attention. I don't mean I became some movie detective. I didn't follow her car or buy a burner phone or sit in the dark scrolling through her emails at 2 a.m. I just stopped explaining away things that felt off. Meredith started taking more calls in the garage. Not the home office, where she had a ring light, a standing desk, and an ergonomic chair that cost more than my first truck. The garage. She said the acoustics were better for recording voice memos. She started closing her laptop whenever I entered the kitchen, but slowly, as if she thought moving slowly made it less suspicious. Her Slack pings got muted. Her phone started living face down on every surface. She also started asking strangely specific questions during arguments. Can you say that again, but more slowly? Do you think your anger comes from feeling unappreciated? Would you describe this as resentment or abandonment? One night, after I asked why her credit card had a $186 dinner charge from a restaurant that she claimed was just for a team happy hour, she didn't answer the question. She tilted her head and said, I notice you go straight to interrogation when you feel insecure. I laughed because I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. Meredith, I said, I'm asking who you had dinner with. You're proving my point. No, I'm asking about a charge on our card. She sighed, as if she were disappointed in a student. This is why I can't bring my full self into conversations with you. That sentence did something to me. It didn't make me angry, exactly. It made me feel as if I had walked into a room where all the furniture had been moved 2 inches to the left. Familiar, but wrong. I didn't answer right away. I looked at her phone on the counter, face down beside her tea mug. I looked at the clean line of her expression, the way she seemed both hurt and prepared. Then I said, okay. Her eyes narrowed a little. Okay. Okay, I repeated. I'm going to bed. I slept maybe 3 hours. That weekend, my sister Alicia came over to help me paint the guest room because Meredith had decided the old color was emotionally flat. Alicia is 33, a nurse, and the kind of person who can smell a lie through drywall. She showed up in leggings, an old college sweatshirt, and a mood that said she had already decided Meredith was annoying, but was willing to be polite for my sake. Meredith was out running errands. Alicia was taping around the window frame when she said, So how long has she been talking to you like a TED Talk with bangs? I nearly dropped the paint roller. What? Your wife. She pressed tape along the baseboard with her thumb. Last time I was here, I asked if you two wanted pizza, and she said, I want to examine why food is your default repair attempt. I almost ordered 2 pizzas out of spite. I laughed because it was easier than admitting how tired I was. Alicia looked over her shoulder. Jonah. What? You look like someone who's been apologizing for things he can't identify. That hit too close. I told her about the calendar block. I told her about Derek's message preview. I told her about the dinner charge, the garage calls, and the way Meredith turned every question into proof that I was emotionally defective. Alicia stopped taping. Jonah, I know. No, I don't think you do. She stood up slowly. She's not just cheating, if that's what this is. She's documenting you. That word stuck. Documenting. I wanted to tell her she was being dramatic, but the problem was that Alicia was almost never dramatic. Blunt, yes. Occasionally rude, but not dramatic. I don't want to be paranoid, I said. You're not paranoid because you noticed a real thing. I also don't want to be controlling. Checking reality is not controlling. She dipped the roller into the tray. But whatever you do not blow up without proof. If she's building a story, don't hand her a better ending. The truth came from the most boring place possible, our shared cloud storage. When Meredith and I bought the house, I set up a shared folder for mortgage documents, insurance PDFs, tax receipts, appliance warranties, contractor invoices, all the adult stuff nobody tells you becomes half your personality after 28. I used it constantly for the business too, mostly because I was bad at remembering which folder held what. One Sunday morning, I was uploading a PDF invoice from a kitchen job when I noticed a new folder inside the shared drive. M-Drafts. I figured it was Meredith's work stuff accidentally synced there. I should have closed it. I know that. But there are moments where privacy stops feeling like a principle and starts feeling like a place someone is hiding the thing they used to hurt you. I opened it. Inside were audio files. Not one or two. Dozens. Jonah_shutdown_kitchen.wave. Garage_conflict_take2.wave. Silent_response_after_money_question.wave. Episode_1_opening_mix.mp3. My hands went cold. I clicked one. My own voice came through the laptop speakers. I can't do this right now. Then Meredith's voice, calm and soft. When you say you can't do this, do you mean the conversation, or do you mean the marriage? A pause. Then my voice again, sharper. I mean, I got home 10 minutes ago, and you started recording me before I took my boots off. The clip ended there. It cut off before she said, it's just audio. It cut off before I said, that doesn't make it better. It cut off before she admitted she had recorded me without telling me because, in her words, people behave differently when they know. My anger became weirdly quiet. I clicked the MP3 called episode_1_opening_mix. A polished female voice I didn't recognize said, what happens when one partner evolves emotionally and the other mistakes vulnerability for attack? Then Meredith's voice came in, lower and intimate, the way podcast hosts talk when they want you to feel as if you're sitting in their living room. I loved my husband, but I spent years shrinking my needs to fit inside his silence. Then my voice, clipped from some argument. Just stop talking. I remembered that argument. She had followed me from the kitchen to the laundry room to the garage, asking the same question 6 different ways while I was trying not to snap. The full sentence had been, just stop talking over me for 1 second. She cut off the last part. I sat at my desk in the little room we called an office, even though it mostly held printer paper, old paint samples, and boxes of cords neither of us could identify. Outside, a delivery truck hummed at the curb. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and stopped. On my screen, my marriage had become content. There was a document in the folder called Pilot Pitch, Quiet House. Quiet House. That was the working title. I opened it and saw our private life turned into a marketable package. Target audience: women 28 to 44 navigating invisible emotional labor. Tone: intimate, confessional, morally complex, but ultimately empowering. Central dynamic: high-functioning wife, emotionally avoidant husband, suburban silence, weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence. I stared at those words while wearing jeans with dried grout on the knees because I had spent my Saturday repairing the downstairs bathroom fan that Meredith said made her anxious. There were episode outlines. Suggested add categories. Notes about ethical vulnerability, which was a nice phrase for using someone else's pain as long as you said it softly. There were references to composite details, even though the details were not composite. They were ours. Our kitchen. Our mortgage. Our fights about her mother visiting for 10 days. My business. my family, my inability to produce perfect sentences on command. Then I saw Derek's comments in the margins. Need more Jonah audio here. His pauses are gold. Can we imply financial control without saying it outright? A fair angle. Keep hidden for now. Makes Meredith less sympathetic in pilot. I read that last comment at least 5 times. A fair angle. There it was. Not a suspicion. Not a vibe. Not insecurity. A fact. Derek wasn't just the coworker sending strange messages. He wasn't just some guy who understood her creative process. He was helping her shape my edited reactions into a story where I was the problem, while he was apparently part of the actual problem. For about 30 seconds, I didn't move. Then I did exactly one smart thing. I called Alicia. She answered on the second ring. What happened? I don't know what my voice sounded like, but I barely got 3 sentences out before she said, "Do not yell. Do not threaten. Do not text her anything emotional. Screenshot everything. I feel like I'm going to be sick. Be sick after you make copies." That was Alicia. Warm as a brick, useful as a fire extinguisher. She gave me the number of a divorce attorney named Luis, who had helped one of her co-workers. His office was above a dental clinic in a strip mall next to a teriyaki place and a nail salon. It was not dramatic. No downtown skyscraper. No walls of leather-bound books. Just a waiting room with a fake plant, 3 outdated magazines, and a receptionist who looked as if she had heard every version of heartbreak and ranked them by paperwork difficulty. I brought printed screenshots, file names, bank statements, a copy of the pitch document, and a flash drive with the audio files. I felt ridiculous carrying my marriage into a lawyer's office in a manila envelope. Luis was calm in a way that made me trust him immediately. He wore a gray sweater instead of a suit and had the kind of voice people use around nervous dogs and panicked clients. He read quietly. After about 10 minutes, he leaned back and said, "I'm going to ask this carefully. Did you consent to being recorded?" "No." "Did you know she was using your voice for a commercial or professional project?" "No." "Did she present any of this to her employer yet?" "I don't know." He tapped the pitch deck with one finger. "Find that out without breaking the law or doing anything stupid." I wasn't planning on doing anything stupid. He looked at me over his glasses. "Okay," I said. I was planning on doing one stupid thing. "Don't." That became the plan. I changed passwords on accounts that were mine alone. I opened a separate checking account for my business income. I saved copies of everything in a secure folder Meredith couldn't access. I stopped having serious conversations with her unless I was calm enough to survive being recorded. When she tried to pull me into late-night emotional autopsies, I said, "I'm not available for this conversation right now," and went to bed. It drove her crazy. "You can't just opt out of intimacy," she said one night from the bedroom doorway. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, taking off my work socks. "I'm not opting out. I'm tired." "You're always tired when accountability enters the room." I looked at her for a long second. "Good night, Meredith." She stared at me as if I had slapped a script out of her hand. A few days later, Nora from next door gave me the confirmation I didn't even know I needed. I was outside loading scrap wood into my truck when she wandered over holding a package that had been delivered to our porch by mistake. "Hey, this is yours," she said. "Thanks." She glanced toward our driveway. "Is Meredith okay?" I saw her leave in a black Subaru the other afternoon. Thought maybe her car was in the shop. My hand tightened on the package. "Which afternoon?" "Thursday. Maybe 2 weeks ago. Trash day." I remember because my Ring camera kept alerting me while I was trying to do yoga. She made a face. "Sorry. Not trying to be nosy." "You're fine," I said, forcing my voice to stay normal. "Do you remember what time?" "Around 3:30? For a clock?" "Some guy was driving." I nodded once. "Thanks, Nora." She looked uncomfortable, as if she had just stepped on something soft. "Hope everything's okay." "Me too." The Thursday she meant was the day Meredith claimed to be having coffee with Tara. I didn't ask Nora for footage. I didn't want to drag her into it unless Luis said we needed it. But the timeline settled into place with a heavy click. Then, because life has a sixth sense of timing, Meredith invited me to her company's listening night. She brought it up while folding laundry on the bed, as if she were asking if I wanted tacos. "It's informal," she said. "Just a small internal thing. Some teams are sharing early concepts. I think it would be good for you to come." I looked at her. "For your marriage project?" Her hands froze on one of my t-shirts. "I don't call it that anymore." "What do you call it?" She smiled without showing teeth. Quiet house. There was my answer. She had submitted it. I told Luis. He did not love the idea of me going. Alicia hated it more. She wants you there as a prop, Alicia said over the phone. I know. Then why go? Because if she uses my voice in front of her company, I need to know. Alicia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, do not improvise like a man in a hardware store who thinks instructions are optional. I use instructions. You once installed a shelf upside down. It still held books. Jonah. I'll stay calm. Good. Be boring. Boring men win paperwork fights. The listening night was held in a co-working space in southeast Portland with exposed brick, plants hanging from pipes, glass conference rooms, and kombucha in dispensers, as if we were all pretending not to want beer. Everyone looked friendly, tired, and carefully casual. There were tiny sandwiches on a long table and name tags printed on recycled paper. Meredith wore a cream blazer I had bought her for her birthday. She looked beautiful. That annoyed me more than it should have. Derek was there too. I knew it was him before anyone introduced us because he had the relaxed posture of someone who had already decided he was smarter than the room. He had sandy hair, expensive sneakers, and a smile that arrived half a second before his eyes did. Meredith touched his arm when we walked up. Derek, this is Jonah. He took my hand in both of his. Jonah, he said warmly. I've heard so much about you. I looked him dead in the eye. I bet. His smile twitched. Meredith's fingers tightened around her paper cup. The presentation started with a show about sleep debt, then one about grief and meal trains, then a concept about adults estranged from siblings that made 3 people in the room nod as if they were already imagining the trailer. I sat beside Meredith in a row of folding chairs, my folder resting flat on my lap. She didn't ask what was in it. Maybe she thought it was invoices. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she still believed she understood me so completely that I couldn't surprise her. Then Tara walked to the front. Tara was in her early 40s, sharp without being cold, with short dark hair and a voice that made people stop checking their phones. She thanked everyone for coming, said something about early-stage creative trust, then introduced Meredith. Meredith walked to the front with her laptop and that calm, luminous expression people use when they're about to publicly confuse confession with courage. Quiet House, she began, is a narrative series about what happens when communication dies slowly inside a marriage. The room went quiet in an appreciative way. She talked about silence, emotional labor, the loneliness of being the only person willing to name pain. She talked about suburban life as if our modest 3-bedroom house were a metaphor with gutters. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. I was sitting 12 feet away while strangers nodded at the edited outline of my supposed failures. Derek stood near the wall with his arms folded, watching Meredith as if he had helped build a monument. Then she played the opening audio. Her voice filled the room. I loved my husband, but I spent years shrinking my needs to fit inside his silence. A pause. Then my voice. Just stop talking. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone looked down at their notebook. Someone else made a small sympathetic sound. Meredith paused the audio as if she were giving the moment space to breathe. That was when Tara glanced at me. I don't know what she expected to see. Shame, maybe. Anger. Confirmation. Instead, I raised my hand. Meredith's face changed so fast most people probably missed it. Tara said, yes? I stood up. I have a question about consent. The room went still in a different way. Meredith laughed lightly. Jonah, maybe we can talk after. No, I said. Since my voice is in the pilot, I think now works. Derek leaned forward. This might not be the best format. I agree, I said. A room full of your coworkers is a strange place to find out my private conversations were recorded, edited, and used in a pitch deck. Nobody moved. Tara looked at Meredith. You told us the audio was consented. Meredith's mouth opened, then closed. I took out the folder. Not dramatically. No slamming. Just a plain blue folder from Office Depot. I brought the full transcript of the clip she just played, I said. The sentence was not just stop talking. It was just stop talking over me for 1 second. The part before that was me asking her to stop recording me after I got home from work. Meredith whispered, Jonah. I kept going because if I stopped, I knew my voice would break. I also have screenshots of Derek's notes asking for more audio of my pauses because they were gold, and another note asking if they could imply financial control without saying it outright. Derek said, "That's being taken out of context." I looked at him. "Great. Then you'll love the full context." Tara walked over and held out her hand for the folder. Her face had gone from confused to corporate emergency in about 15 seconds. I gave it to her. She opened it. Read one page. Then another. The room had become so quiet I could hear the air system kick on. I said, "There's also a note about hiding the affair angle because it made Meredith less sympathetic in the pilot." Someone in the back said, very softly, "Oh my God." Meredith's face went pale, but she recovered fast. That was the thing about her. She always recovered fast when there was an audience. "There are complexities," she said. "Our marriage has been emotionally unsafe for a long time." That was the moment I finally understood her strategy. If she could make the room believe I was unsafe, then anything she did became survival. The recordings, the edits, Derek, the pitch, all of it. So I said the one thing I knew she did not expect. "You may believe that, and we can discuss it through attorneys. But you don't get to record me without consent, have an inappropriate relationship with your coworker, and turn me into content." The word attorneys hit harder than yelling would have. Meredith stared at me. Derek muttered, "This is insane." Tara looked at him and said, "Do not speak." I had never liked corporate people more in my life. Tara turned back to Meredith. "Pause the presentation. Now." Meredith closed her laptop with hands that were no longer steady. I sat back down. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my wrists, but my voice had stayed even. That mattered to me, maybe more than it should have. The fallout was not instant in the satisfying movie way. Nobody got marched out. Meredith didn't confess into a microphone. Derek didn't trip over a chair. Real consequences are quieter and meaner. Tara ended the session early and asked Meredith and Derek to remain behind. I left before anyone could pull me into a hallway conversation. Outside, the evening air smelled like rain and food carts. I sat in my truck for 5 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel, waiting for my breathing to slow down. My phone buzzed. "Alicia, well?" "Me." I stayed boring. "Alicia, proud of you. Also, I need details immediately." "Me, later." "Alicia, fine. But I'm emotionally pacing." I almost smiled. HR contacted me the next morning through a company attorney, asking whether I would provide copies of the materials. Luis handled it. I did not take their calls directly. That was hard for me because part of me wanted to explain everything to everyone. Luis said that part of me was not invited to make decisions. Meredith came home the night of the presentation furious. Not apologetic. Furious. She stood in our kitchen with her coat still on, cheeks flushed, hair tucked behind one ear as if she had been pulling at it in the car. "You humiliated me," she said. I was at the sink washing a mug. I remember that because it was the first time in weeks my hands weren't shaking. "You humiliated yourself," I said. "You could have talked to me privately. You recorded me privately." She flinched, but only for a second. Then came the tears. Then the therapy words. Then the accusations. I was vindictive. I was emotionally withholding. I was trying to ruin her career because I couldn't handle her success. Derek understood her because I never tried. The recordings were reflective material, not exploitation. The affair was a symptom, not the real issue. I let her talk. When she finished, I placed a printed separation agreement on the kitchen island. She stared at it. "What is this?" "What you keep saying you need," I said. "Space." For once, she had no immediate language for what was happening. She didn't sign that night. Of course she didn't. She picked up the papers, read the first page, and set them down as if they were contaminated. "You planned this," she said. "Yes." Her eyes filled again, but this time I couldn't tell if she was sad, scared, or just angry that I had become less useful to the story. "I don't know who you are right now," she said. I dried my hands on a towel. "That makes 2 of us." Over the next month, the consequences landed piece by piece. Meredith was placed on leave during the company review. Derek was fired first. I found out through Luis, not because I asked, but because Derek's attorney sent an aggressive letter claiming I had damaged his reputation. Luis responded with enough attached evidence that we never heard from him again. Meredith eventually resigned. Her company did not release the pilot. They also sent me a formal apology, written in the most bloodless legal language imaginable, confirming that my voice, personal information, and private conversations would not be used in any format. I read it 3 times at my kitchen table, not because it made me feel good, but because I needed to see the words in writing. Our divorce moved faster than I expected because Meredith did not want Discovery digging through more messages. The house was sold. That hurt more than I thought it would. I hated the mortgage, hated the HOA emails, hated the way the upstairs hallway creaked in winter, but I had fixed half that house with my own hands. I had replaced cabinet hinges, patched drywall, repaired the back fence after a windstorm, and installed the bathroom fan that Meredith said sounded too aggressive. Still, when I walked through the empty rooms after the final cleaning, I felt less grief than I expected. The house looked smaller without our furniture. Less like a symbol, more like walls, floors, and a lot of nail holes. I kept my business. Meredith kept pretending, at least publicly, that the divorce was about different communication needs. Alicia sent me a screenshot of Meredith's post one night. Meredith had written, "Sometimes love means accepting that two people can experience the same relationship in profoundly different ways. I'm grieving, growing, and choosing softness." Alicia's text underneath said, "I am begging you not to comment." I didn't. That felt like growth. The last time I saw Meredith as my wife was in a mediator's office with a bowl of peppermints on the table and fluorescent lights making everyone look slightly guilty. She looked tired. Not destroyed. Not evil. Just smaller somehow. As if the performance had finally cost more energy than she had. We signed the last set of papers with blue pens. The mediator explained next steps in a careful voice. Outside the conference room, someone laughed near the reception desk, and the sound felt strange, as if it belonged to a different building. As we were leaving, Meredith said, "You know I wasn't lying about being lonely." I stopped with my hand on the door. "I believe you," I said. She looked surprised. Then I added, "But loneliness doesn't give you the right to turn someone else into a villain so people will clap for you." Her face crumpled a little. She started crying then. Quietly. For once, there was no audience. I didn't hug her. I didn't comfort her. I also didn't hate her in that moment. I just felt done. I drove home to the rental place I had moved into, a small duplex with bad water pressure, and a neighbor who played drums badly every Wednesday. The kitchen had ugly brown cabinets and a fridge that made a clicking sound when the compressor kicked on. My couch was too big for the living room, so it sat at a weird angle facing the TV as if it were trying to leave. I ate grocery store sushi at the counter and watched a basketball game with the sound too low. It should have felt pathetic. It didn't. It felt peaceful. For a long time, I thought love meant staying calm while someone kept moving the truth around. I thought being loyal meant giving endless benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt was the only thing holding the relationship together. Now I think love without honesty is just a hostage situation with anniversary photos. I don't know if I'm good at communication yet. I'm trying. I go to therapy twice a month. I tell clients no when they ask for impossible deadlines. I answer Alicia's calls instead of letting them go to voicemail. I bought a coffee maker that doesn't sound like it's chewing gravel. Small things. But the biggest change is this. When something feels wrong now, I don't call myself insecure before I check whether I'm right. In the end, I didn't lose my story. I took it back. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.